That red spray paint line cost the HOA nearly $6 million. The hiss of aerosol paint cut through the cold Texas morning before I even stepped onto my porch. By the time I reached the gravel driveway, 3 survey stakes had already been hammered into my pasture, bright orange ribbons snapping in the wind beside my grandfather's old fence line. One of the workers pointed straight at my barn. "New county survey says the property line moved 14 feet east." Moved. Like land just gets up and walks away overnight. Then I saw the excavator idling beside the oak tree my grandfather planted in 1968, diesel smoke hanging thick in the air while Victoria Hargrove stood nearby in a cream blazer holding a clipboard like she owned the county. Her Lexus sat behind her with the HOA logo magnet slapped across the door. "You've been encroaching on community land for years," she said with a smile sharp enough to cut wire. Then one of the workers ripped an iron survey marker out of the dirt and tossed it into the bucket like trash. That's when I realized this wasn't a mistake. Someone wanted the old property line gone. The metallic clank of that survey marker hitting the excavator bucket stayed in my head all day. My grandfather taught me when I was 12 that county markers do not get removed unless a judge signs off on it. So after the crew left, I drove straight to the Caldwell County Records office with dirt still stuck to my boots. The clerk behind the counter looked nervous the second I gave her my parcel number. She pulled up the new subdivision survey, then froze. "That is strange," she muttered, zooming in on the digital plat map. According to the filing date, Willow Creek Estates had submitted a revised boundary adjustment 3 weeks earlier. Problem was, state law required adjacent landowners to be notified before approval. I never got a letter. Never got an email. Nothing. Then I noticed something even worse. The revised line cut directly through my well house and half my driveway. Victoria was not trying to steal 14 feet. She was trying to landlock my entire property. By sunrise the next morning, concrete trucks were already rolling through the subdivision gate. Victoria was moving fast because she knew county disputes could freeze construction overnight. I parked beside the entrance and watched workers unload limestone blocks exactly where my original fence line used to sit. The smell of wet concrete and fresh mortar drifted across the road while a crew installed giant metal letters reading Willow Creek Estates beside my pasture. Then I spotted something that made my stomach tighten. They had paved directly over the old drainage easement connected to my well system. One hard storm and runoff would flood straight toward my barn. I confronted the site supervisor, but he just handed me a stamped permit with county approval signatures already attached. Victoria stood 20 yards away talking with a man in a navy blazer from the planning office, laughing like the deal was already finished. Then my phone buzzed with a county email. Final notice, access compliance review pending. They were preparing to declare my driveway non-compliant within 72 hours. The county inspector arrived at my property just after noon carrying a tablet and a yellow compliance vest that still had the fold lines in it. He spent less than 5 minutes looking around before marking red notes across the screen. According to the updated subdivision access standards, my gravel driveway was now considered an unauthorized shared entry route. Shared. That word mattered. It meant Willow Creek Estates was positioning my land as part of their expansion plan. The inspector handed me a correction notice requiring a paved turnaround, drainage reconstruction, and a new gated access point within 30 days. Estimated cost, $84,000. I almost laughed until I noticed the signature approving the order. Victoria's husband, Daniel Hargrove, sat on the county zoning advisory board. Suddenly the rushed permits made sense. Then the inspector quietly pulled me aside before leaving. "You did not hear this from me," he whispered, glancing toward the subdivision entrance. "But somebody deleted the original survey scans from the county archive last month." That night I stopped trusting the county website and started digging through physical records instead. The Caldwell Archive building smelled like dust, mildew, and old printer ink, the kind of place nobody visits unless lawyers force them to. A retired clerk named Martha recognized my parcel number immediately. Her expression changed the second I mentioned Willow Creek Estates. Without saying much, she disappeared into a back storage room and returned dragging a gray document box covered in faded water stains. "These were supposed to be transferred years ago," she said quietly. Inside were handwritten easement logs, utility plats, and survey corrections dating back to 1974. Then I found the strange part. Every document connected to my property referenced an older railroad survey map filed under a completely different district number. Not missing. Reclassified. Somebody had buried the original boundary records under transportation archives where normal property searches would never find them. Then Martha slid one more file across the table. The reclassification request had Daniel Hargrove's signature on it. Rain hammered the roof just after midnight, while I spread the archived documents across my kitchen table beside an old measuring compass my grandfather used for field surveys. One railroad map from 1911 kept bothering me because the creek bend did not match the modern county plat. So I drove out before dawn with a metal detector and a flashlight, following the original rail coordinates through the wet pasture behind the subdivision wall. The mud sucked at my boots while sprinklers hissed across the brand new HOA entrance landscaping. Then the detector screamed near a cluster of cedar trees behind Lot 17. 6 inches underground, buried beneath fresh gravel, sat an original brass survey cap stamped Caldwell Western Rail 1911. I cleaned the mud off with my sleeve and checked the coordinates twice. My property line had never moved at all. The entire subdivision entrance had been built almost 20 feet inside my land. Then headlights appeared behind me. Victoria's security patrol had just pulled into the pasture. The security guard stepped out of the golf cart with a flashlight in one hand and his phone already recording in the other. He told me the HOA had received reports of trespassing near community property after hours. Community property. I almost pointed at the brass railroad cap still sitting in my palm, but then I noticed something behind him. Fresh wooden stakes had been driven into the mud farther up the hill sometime during the night. New lot markers. Victoria was still expanding the subdivision even after burying the original boundary evidence. That changed everything. I stopped arguing and started thinking like a surveyor again. By noon the next day, I hired a licensed historical land consultant from Austin named Richard Bellamy, a man who specialized in disputed railroad plats and abandoned easements. He spent 20 minutes reviewing my documents before pulling off his glasses and saying one sentence that nearly stopped my heartbeat. "Ethan, if these coordinates hold up, every mortgage inside that entrance corridor was filed against the wrong parcel numbers." Richard worked fast because he knew what was coming once the banks figured it out. Within 48 hours he had reconstructed the original rail corridor using archived elevation markers, utility easements, and satellite overlays from before the subdivision existed. The result looked like a legal grenade. The HOA entrance, the decorative wall, the visitor parking area, and parts of 7 front lawns all crossed into my parcel. Worse, 2 model homes had been marketed using lot dimensions that technically did not exist. Richard filed an emergency survey affidavit with the county before sunrise Monday morning. By lunchtime, title companies started calling homeowners inside Willow Creek Estates asking for clarification on boundary inconsistencies. Panic spread fast. Moving trucks stopped at the gate. Contractors disappeared mid-shift. Then Victoria posted an emergency HOA statement blaming historical mapping confusion and accusing me of sabotaging the neighborhood. But an hour later Richard called with another discovery. The county had just scheduled a closed-door review with the Texas Real Estate Commission. The review meeting lasted less than 2 hours before county inspectors started placing bright orange suspension notices across the subdivision entrance. By evening, the limestone wall crews were already tearing out sections they had poured 3 days earlier. The sharp grind of concrete saws echoed across Willow Creek Estates while homeowners stood in their driveways staring at documents they suddenly realized might not be valid. Victoria stopped answering calls entirely after local news stations obtained copies of the railroad survey affidavit and Daniel Hargrove's archive reclassification request. Then the final hit landed. The Texas Real Estate Commission opened a formal investigation into fraudulent parcel disclosures tied to the subdivision expansion permits. Every rushed approval, Every altered boundary filing, every deleted archive scan suddenly pointed back to the same office. 3 weeks later, I stood beside my grandfather's restored fence line while a county survey team reinstalled the original brass markers exactly where they had been buried for over a century. Turns out the land never forgot where the line belonged.